Hello and welcome to the next section in Unit 9. This section is all about factoring again. So the last section we talked about multiplying binomials. This time we're going to be talking about if we had multiplied those binomials, could we put it back into the factored form? So we're going to be going backwards of what we did in the last section. So when you're factoring binomials, or trinomials I should say, you're going to be playing a game pretty much. So when you're playing that game, what that game tells you to do, or what you need to do to be successful at that game, is you're going to have two numbers. In this case, we're just going to multiply these two numbers to get the top number, and then add those two numbers to get the negative, or to get the bottom number. So now over here, this is what you're going to be doing almost every time you factor. You have to figure out two numbers that multiply to equal the top and add up to equal the bottom. So it would help, sometimes it helps to write down the factors of the top number. So 3 times 5 or 1 times 15 are two numbers that multiply to equal, this should be negative 8 by the way. So 3 times 5 is 15. If I make both of these negative, negative 3 times negative 5 is still positive 15. But when I add them together, negative 3 plus negative 5, I do get negative 8. So those are the two numbers I was looking for. Now again, I need to figure out two numbers that multiply to equal 36 and add up to equal 13. So again, sometimes it's helpful to write down the factors of 36. So I know that 1 times 36 is 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, I'm going to extend this over here, 4 times 9, and 6 times 6. So out of these choices, which two of these, which combination or which pair of numbers could add up to equal 13? Well, that would be 4 and 9. So these two numbers have to be 4 and 9. So in factoring, you start with the standard form, so x squared plus bx plus c. You need to find two numbers that multiply to equal c and add up to equal b. So I'll get into that in a minute. You can read what this says right here. So the way I like to do these is I like to use a little box method. So when you're doing the box method, the number A goes up here, C goes here, B goes here. So this number is A, B, and C. So if there's no number in front of the x squared, that means A is 1. B is 10, so that'll go out here. C is 25. So in this box, in this column, I need to figure out two numbers that multiply to equal this number. So two numbers that multiply together to equal 1, that just has to be 1 and 1. Then I need to figure out two numbers that multiply to equal 25. So let's try 5 and 5. After I fill in the box, I'm going to multiply across. So 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 5 is 5. If these two numbers add up to equal this number, then my answer is in here. So 5 plus 5 is 10, so that means I'm good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this first number, I'm going to multiply it times x. So this number times x, and I'm going to add its diagonal, so plus 5. I'm going to take this number times x and add its diagonal, so plus 5. So our answer would be x plus 5 times x plus 5. So next one, again, I'm going to use the little box method here. So A is 1, so that's going to go up here. B is 25. C is 24. So two numbers that multiply together to equal this number. 1 times 1 is the only thing that you can put there. So we need two numbers that multiply to equal 24. So again, if you're not sure what multiples of 24 are, 24 you guys could probably figure out, but if it was a different number, it always helps to write out a factor tree. So 1 times 24 is 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. So those are the factors of 24. So remember, we are trying to find two numbers that add up to equal 25. So out of these choices, 4 plus 6 is not 25, 3 plus 8 is not 25, 2 plus 12 is not 25. But 1 plus 24 is, so 1 and 24 would be our two numbers that we put in there. So I multiply across. 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 24 is 24. If I added these together, they do equal 25. So that means my answer is inside of the box. So the two numbers on the left are always going to be what you multiply times x. Your answer is always going to look like this, something times x, something times x. So it doesn't matter if you start at the top or at the bottom, you just have to start with one of the numbers on the left. So I'll start with this one. I add its diagonal. So x, I could put a 1 there, but I don't need to. So x plus 24, and then 1x plus 1, or just x plus 1. So this would be our answer. So 1, 9, and negative 10. So factors of negative 10. 1, 10, 2, 5, with one of the numbers having to be negative. So 1 times 1 is the only combination that will equal 1. So which of these could add up? Oh, I wrote the wrong thing on here. Whoops. Trying to find factors of 9. So 3 times 3 and 1 times 9. So out of these two pairs, which of these could possibly add up to negative 10? So it have to be those two. So that means since they add up to negative 10, that means they both have to be negative, because when I multiply them together, they have to be positive. So negative 1 and negative 9. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. 1 times negative 9 is negative 9. So if I add these two together, I do get negative 10. So that means my answer is inside this box. So I'm going to take the first number, multiply times x. So x, add its diagonal. So x plus negative 9 or x minus 9. This number times x, so 1 times x, or just x, plus negative 1 or minus 1. So a is 1, c is 12, b is negative 8. So factors of 12 are 1, 12, 2, 6, 3, 4. So when you're doing these factor trees, it helps to start at 1 here and then just go in order, so you don't repeat anything. 1 times 1 is 1. So I need two numbers that multiply to equal 12 and add up to negative 8. So if they multiply to equal a positive number, that means they both have to be negative or both have to be positive. But if they add up to a negative number, then that means they're both going to be negative. So 2 and 6 would work. If I have negative 2 and negative 6. So 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. 1 times negative 6 is negative 6. If I add these two together, I get negative 8. So that means my answer is in here. So I start with the left number, top left number, multiply it times x. So 1 times x, or just x. Add its diagonal. So plus negative 6 or minus 6. Then I take the other left number, add its diagonal. So 1 times x, minus 2. So x minus 6, x minus 2. And then I got a factor, x squared minus 11x plus 18. So 1, 18, and negative 11. So the factors of 18, 1, 18, 2, 9, 3, 6. So they add up to a negative number, so that means since they're multiplying to equal positive 18, they both have to be negative. So which of these combinations could add up to negative 11? That'd be negative 2 and negative 9. These have to be 1 and 1. So 1 times x plus negative 9 or minus 9. 1 times x minus 2. So moving on to the next page. So this time, and you might see, well, you will see stuff like this. So this time the c, or the last number, is negative. So a is still 1, c is negative 12, and then b is positive 1. So the factors of 12, 1, 12, 2, 6, 3, 4. So we need two numbers that multiply to equal negative 12. So first of all, 1 times 1 is 1. So we're either going to use 1 and 12, 2 and 6, or 3 and 4. But the two numbers that I choose have to also add up to positive 1. Since this is a negative 12, when I multiply two numbers to equal a negative number, that means one has to be positive, one's negative. So out of these three choices, if one was positive, one was negative, which one of those could add up to positive 1? So hopefully you notice 3 and 4, because they're only one apart. So we want the answer, when I add them together, to be positive 1. So I'm going to make 3 the negative 1, 4 the positive 1, because if I add those two together, I get positive 1. So that means our answer is inside here. So 1 times x is x plus 4. 1 times x minus 3. That's our answer. So notice that the signs are different when this is a negative sign right here. So A is 1, C is negative 40, B is 3. So if our C term is 40, I need to figure out the factors of 40. So 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 4 times 10, 5 times 8. I think that's it. So two numbers multiply to equal negative 40. So that means one will be negative, one will be positive. And then when I add them together, they have to equal positive 3. So which of these are only 3 apart? So that'd be 5 and 8. So when I multiply 1 times 1, I get 1. So I'm going to be multiplying 5 times 8, but it needs to be negative. So which one of these do I want to make negative if they add up to equal positive 3? I want to make the 5 negative, because that's the smaller one. So when I add them together, so negative 5, 1 times 8 is 8. When I add these two together, I get positive 3. So that's why I made the 5 negative instead of 8. So take this number, multiply times x, and then add its diagonal. So x plus 8 times x minus 5. I'm trying to get these notes done quickly for you guys. So A is 1, C is negative 10, B is negative 3. So factors of 10 are 1, 10, 2, 5. So they have to add up to equal negative 3. This is a negative, so they're going to be, or it's going to be 1 positive, 1 negative. So which of these pairs are 3 apart? That'd be 2 and 5. 1 times 1 is 1. So if they add up to negative 3, that means I want the bigger one to be negative. So 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. So when I add these two together, I do get negative 3. So our answer is 1 times x plus negative 5, or x minus 5, times 1 times x, or x, plus 2. A is 1, C is negative 48, B is negative 13. So 1 times 1 is 1. So just so you guys know, we're going to see A be something different than 1 in the future, but for this section, it's 1 always, just to make it easy for you guys. So factors of 48. 1 times 48, 2 times 24, 3 times 16, 4 times 12, 6 times 8. And I know you guys are probably not going to be as fast as me at these factors, so you can use a calculator to do that. But I'm trying to make the notes go as quickly as possible. So I need two numbers that multiplied equal negative 48. So that means one will be negative, one will be positive. They have to add up to negative 13. So which of these pairs is 13 apart? That would be 3 and 16. So I want it to be negative 13. So that means I want the bigger number to be negative. So negative 16 and 3. So 1 times negative 16 is negative 16. 1 times 3 is 3. So when I add these two together, I get negative 13. So 1 times x plus 3, x minus 16. So I recommend pausing this video, and I will put up the answers here in a minute because I don't want these notes to be too long. There we go. So here's where we left off, I believe. So those would be the answers for the ones we missed.